Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight, an ex-con weighs in on the Prime Minister's marijuana pledge. Travel benefits increase for cabinet ministers. The Bahamas monitoring the coronavirus, plus a big dip in temperature overnight.
Our News is brought to you by Alive.
Welcome to Our News and thanks for joining us. I'm Kyle Joaquin. Following the Prime Minister's call for people in prison for the possession of small amounts of marijuana to be released, a well-known advocate for social and mental health is opening up about a past conviction for marijuana possession that has followed him throughout his life. He and others say they want something different for future generations. Jared Higgs reports.
I was arrested in 1974. And it still travels with me.
Terry Miller is a well-known advocate for social and mental health. His Bash Institute provides counseling for drug addicts, and his Bakari group has advocated for cannabis law reform. What some may not know is back in the 70s, Miller was arrested and convicted for possession of half a bag of marijuana.
Why these guys come to my apartment? And all we were doing is smoking a joint.
Miller avoided a 3-month jail sentence by paying a $100 fine. Despite avoiding jail himself, Miller says his conviction has followed him for years.
I couldn't travel for a number of years, and even now, whenever someone feel a certain way, they would delay my visas to the United States. A couple of years ago, while in the midst of running Bash, it took me 3 years to get my visa.
Finding people who are willing to talk about their past issues with marijuana is difficult as they look to put the past behind them. However, we did find one man who was willing to open up about his experience. 53-year-old Paul Thompson missed out on many of life's moments when he was jailed for almost 3 years for possessing a little over a pound of marijuana. He spent his 50th birthday behind bars, and his closest companion, his mother, died while he was away.
It affected me hard, cause well, it only was me and my old lady riding at the time.
Since being released in October, Thompson has held down a job at a car wash. He says he is fighting to survive, and having a drug conviction on his police record isn't helping. However, the former inmate says he's more concerned about younger convicts.
You get so much of guys coming there for a little joint, the officer looking for stripe. You call that stripe. You catch a fellow with a half bike, and you could take that shoulder away and let him be on his way, cause jail overcrowded right now.
It is unclear whether ex-convicts like Thompson, who were caught with more than a pound of marijuana, will have their records wiped clean as the administration embarks on marijuana law reform efforts. Miller, on the other hand, says his police record does not reflect his 1974 conviction. While he's come a long way in the past 46 years, he's more focused on marijuana advocacy than ever. He says using marijuana is an adult decision that should be treated as such.
An individual makes a decision that they want to smoke. That is their choice.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jared Higgs.
While opposition leader Philip Davis insists that the Prime Minister's call for certain inmates to be released is just a political stunt, insisting most people arrested for possession of small quantities of marijuana are not sent to jail. Giorgio Bain has that.
A first-year lawyer would also know that most people arrested for small amounts of marijuana are not sent to jail. Most get a conditional or absolute discharge or non-custodial sentences.
He called the Prime Minister's calls for persons convicted of small quantity possession to be released a PR gimmick.
I think that was, again, PR, public relations gimmickry, to suggest that he's doing something that's going to impact lives. But at the end of the day, if he wants to do something that will impact lives, we know that persons with small amount of marijuana are not usually sent to prison. Right, so perhaps what he should be considering, if he wants to do something for these persons, perhaps he should be engaging with the United States government to discuss ways and means of facilitating them being able to now travel to the United States.
On Tuesday, Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis hit out at the Progressive Liberal Party, stating the work of social justice is about action, not about endless and empty talk from those who failed to act decisively when last in office. However, Davis insisted it was the PLP that got the ball rolling on the matter.
During our last term in office, it was the PLP who amended the law to provide for a significant reduction in a timeline before criminal records are permanently expunged, and this included the possession of small quantities of marijuana.
Davis said after leading a delegation to Jamaica and checking out businesses in the marijuana industry, he is curious who will benefit from the marijuana industry in the Bahamas.
The Prime Minister should not seek to fool us that he's making way for small business people. The F&M is making way for their rich business friends to make a windfall when the law changes.
Davis, who has called for the resignation of Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands, continued those calls today, stating with the Marijuana Commission's preliminary report being leaked from his ministry, he should no longer hold that position.
The report of the Commission was leaked from the Ministry of Health. The files of Oban went missing from his office. Now, what is more egregious?
Reporting for our News, I'm Georgie O'Bain.
The Minnis cabinet's decision to increase travel benefits for ministers and their spouses sparking outrage among many Bahamian taxpayers. The decision was quietly made by cabinet last year, but was not made public until Monday. Berthany McDermott takes a look.
The new travel policy for ministers provides for $100 per day per diem for spouses and an increase in ministerial per diem for domestic travel from $80 to $100 per day and from $150 to $250 for international travel. If a minister travels on government business 40 days out of the year, his per diem goes from $6,000 to $10,000 for that period.
You put my bill up so your wife could travel? Wrong message.
So
that's why they wouldn't say much about it, because they don't want you to know.
On that question about the per diem, that's a problem.
Additionally, ministers are to be afforded memberships to the American Airlines Admirals Club, business class tickets for all trips less than 10 hours in duration, and first class tickets for all trips over 10 hours. Then there's the special prepaid debit card, which will be issued to ministers to use on all official trips. But that's not all. Paid spousal trips have been increased from once to twice per year. Cabinet's decision to increase travel expenses for ministers and their spouses isn't sitting well with some Bahamian taxpayers.
We have like a soul lot to do here, like, rebuilding Abaco, Freeport, the roads. They've been doing for the past 80 years. Yeah, they should focus their attention on a lot more other stuff than just that.
Any increase in expenditure at this time would be unwise as far as I'm concerned. The economy is not doing well enough to support additional expenditure.
This revelation comes weeks after it was revealed that the Minnis administration increased its travel budget by $4 million. The move is a complete about-face by Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis, who, while in opposition, accused the former Christie administration of overspending on travel. In January 2018, Minnis said only essential travel would be approved and promised to provide reports of his cabinet ministers' travel.
If you want the cabinet to report of the ministers' travels, that's not a problem. But what I can say is all their travels are within budget.
However, 2 years later, that report never materialized. This new travel policy was made quietly and was only exposed due to the newspaper column Perspective. Political observers have questioned the decision to increase the travel benefits of cabinet ministers and give their spouses a daily per diem at a time when Bahamians are still struggling to adjust to an increase in value-added tax, a 15% increase in electricity bills as of March, and fees associated with the new plastics ban.
I don't think it's fair right now.
We're all suffering under some significant pressures and stress right now, and you've got to be careful what you do. You can't just go increase things left, right, and center.
Now, these residents also say the government should rethink that new policy to increase travel expenses and reverse it in its entirety.
Thanks, Berthany. Well, the Bahamas has begun taking precautions in response to the spread of the deadly coronavirus that has caused over a dozen deaths. Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sands warned the virus could become a pandemic, but insisted there is no need to push the panic button just yet. Jasmine Brown reports.
The health minister addressed those concerns head-on, insisting the virus that has caught the world's attention is being closely monitored by officials here in the Bahamas.
It has the potential to become a pandemic. At this time, as of 20 minutes ago, when we got updated, there are no recommendations for any changes at our border, any restrictions to travel.
On Wednesday morning, the Chinese government said it was now mandatory to wear face masks in public places in Wuhan, the Chinese city where the new coronavirus emerged last month. And on Tuesday night, authorities confirmed a case of the virus, also known as 2019-NCOV. But SANS says so far, the Bahamas isn't set to take any extreme measures.
That we are going to provide the capacity to test for this virus in country.
SANS said while there are currently no plans to restrict travel to the Bahamas, the Ministry of Health has been in discussions with officials at Lynden Pindling International Airport in an effort to get them to consider what approaches they need to take at the border.
Certainly, we don't see, based on the evidence, any reason to now stop travel into the Bahamas. We are going to be paying attention to the travel history of people. So the same way that if somebody has traveled to the Congo or to surrounding countries, we will flag them and do a secondary interview.
There have been reported cases in other parts of China, Hong Kong, Japan, Thailand, South Korea, and the United States. So far, there have been more than a dozen confirmed deaths. The virus can cause cough, difficulty breathing, fever, and in some cases, pneumonia, which cannot be treated with antibiotics. Though the situation is being monitored, SANS noted that the virus is far from being the largest threat to public health in the country.
You had 130,000 people die from measles last year. You had almost 500,000 people die from flu last year. Pay attention, be concerned, but do what you can do to protect yourself and your family. And so if you have not been immunized, if you didn't get your flu shot because you're afraid or you don't like needles or whatever, go get your flu shot.
Reporting for our News, I'm Jasmine Brown.
Thanks, Jasmine. Still to come, Caribbean travel marketplace underway. Plus, tourists and locals enjoy a rare dip in temperatures. Stay tuned.
Phone is good. Internet is good. TV is good. But why just pick one thing when you can have everything with Tria? Only $99 a month gets you phone, internet, and cable. That's everything you need for $99 a month. Ask for Tria. Call 601-2200 or email residentialsales@cablebahamas.com. Rev, you and us together.
You're watching Our News. Welcome back. A local attorney who is working to have records wiped clean is calling the Prime Minister's declaration regarding marijuana a step in the right direction.
So I want to see what's going to piggyback on the decriminalization. How are we going to develop an industry from this? How are Bahamians going to own the industry that ought to subsequently develop from the decriminalization of marijuana?
Just last week, Nicholas Mitchell, litigation partner at CML Chambers, sent out a tweet calling for those convicted of small amounts of marijuana who seek to have their records clean to contact him. Since then, he's received numerous calls from young men and women eager to put their past regarding marijuana behind them.
My partners and I came up with the idea that what we would do is effectively interview people and determine your eligibility, find out, what volume of dangerous drugs you've been incarcerated for, whether or not you qualify pursuant to the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act. And from there, we would make an application on that person's behalf to have their records wiped.
So here's how the current law works. If you are convicted or sentenced to prison time for possession of drugs, it stays on your record for 5 years. However, certain amendments made in 2015 have created an opportunity for a fresh start.
There's now the opportunity with the amendments the government made to the legislation to apply for what they call early rehabilitation, which means that even if the 5-year period has not lapsed, if the circumstances are such that the board feels it would be in the best interest for this person's record to be cleared.
Prime Minister Minnis has said that he's seen firsthand how the country's laws harm young people from modest backgrounds, which is why his government is seeking to make changes. Mitchell said it's a step in the right direction.
There are a lot of young men and women, dozens of them, that are incarcerated for simple possession, a few grams, nothing that even remotely constitutes possession with intent to supply. So, it's a welcome remark from the government at this point. It might be the most progressive thing that they have sought to implement or at least examine over the course of the last few years. So I'm behind it.
In the wake of Hurricane Dorian, government is now re-examining ways to distribute the tourism experience, services, and products throughout the Bahamas, according to Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis. During the opening of the Caribbean Hotel and Tourism Association's Caribbean Travel Marketplace last night, Minnis said the country's greatest enemy is inertia.
If we remain only New Providence-centric, we will undermine our potential for growth and put ourselves at greater risk were a Dorian-type hurricane to strike New Providence. We must innovate in order to grow and to survive.
Minnis called on the CHTA to lead the charge in enhancing the country's tourism product.
We must now take up the mantle of leading this rethinking of tourism to our benefit and for the benefit of our children and the future generations of the Bahamas. God has blessed the Bahamas with many islands and keys, and therefore many more opportunities to diversify our tourism centers.
South Florida recorded the lowest temperatures in nearly a decade today, dipping to the 40s and 50s. Here in New Providence, the cold 60-degree weather and strong winds weren't enough to keep tourists off the beach.
I'm not happy with the wind today, but I always love the weather here. We always come back, whether it's a cruise or whether we're just staying in Atlantis.
So you plan on going in the water?
I'm going to dip my toes.
That's it.
I'll dip him.
All along Junkanoo Beach, cruise ship passengers got their feet wet. Christian, a visitor from North Dakota, says the temperature here is nothing compared to the negative 15-degree weather she left back home.
This is okay, actually. It's very windy, but it's warmer than home.
All right. You plan on going in the water?
No.
Well, I went in a little bit, but not.
You just dipped your toes.
Too windy.
We were here
too rough.
year.
It's gorgeous.
We love it here.
It's beautiful. You live in a beautiful island. Beautiful. We love it.
Thank you, Carol.
I found a penny on the beach.
Oh, nice. You can keep it.
I will.
Still to come, the Healthy Lunch pilot program launched. Stay tuned.
Phone is good. Internet is good. TV is good. But why just pick one thing when you can have everything with Tria? Only $99 a month gets you phone, internet, and cable. That's everything you need for $99 a month. Ask for Tria. Call 601-2200 or email residentialsales@cablebahamas.com. Rev, you and us together.
The Ministries of Health and Education are looking to make meals at public schools a whole lot healthier with the implementation of the 100% Smart Fruits for Kids program. Health Minister Dr. Dwayne Sand said the program lays the foundation for a lifetime of good health.
Today is a pivotal day in the lives of our youth, who are the driving force of our future. Ensuring that a nation has access to healthy food is vital to sustaining its growth for generations to come.
Sand says studies show that eating fruits and veggies is associated with a decrease in the risk of many chronic diseases. The pilot program is being launched at Centerville Primary School for 6 weeks. The foodie company has partnered with the Ministries of Education and Health to assist more than 400 students and staffers.
They will include fresh foods. In the pilot, we're going to also supply water to the students as a part of the physical resources. We'll have other resources such as nutritional health tips, but for consumption, it will be the fruits, whole fruits such as bananas and apples, and hopefully in the long term we'll be able to introduce some native local fruits as well.